Ladies and gentlemen, eyes up. All bets are off now. This is Count It In. Three bands and two comics are performing for a student talent show. How many different programs can be arranged if the comics must be performed between the bands? We are going to use here a certain process we call fundamental counting principle with a certain idea or change, because it is restricted here that the bands shall be performing in between the comics shall be performing in between the bands. And we are given that all of them will be performing on the said talent show. In short, on a specific program, there are 5 different slots: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, because all of these 3 bands and 2 comics are performing on the said show. Now for our bands, let's talk about the bands. Definitely, they will be performing first, in the middle, and the last. For the fundamental counting principle, for the first placement, we are going to place here the number of bands that can be scheduled on the first show. And here, we have 3 different bands. We will not be including the 2 comics because, as mentioned, the comics must be performing between the bands. So for the first performance, it would be either band 1, band 2, or band 3. Let's just focus on the bands this time. The second band will be performing on the middle here, the third schedule for our talent show. However, if the band band number 1 has already performed on the first, or they are scheduled as the first performers to perform, that would mean that band can no longer perform on the middle of our talent show and the last. In short, from here, if we have band number 1, the remaining number of bands that can perform on the middlemost schedule will only be the remaining 2 bands here. So 3 and 2, that will be the schedule of our band. If the third band is scheduled to be here, that would mean for the last show, which is set for the bands, there's only 1 remaining band to perform. This is what happens for the 3 bands, because they will be performing in these 3 slots, and then there are no repetitions of performance. Before we multiply as the concept of fundamental counting principle, let's complete this by our comics. There are 2 comics on the show. Okay? So if there are 2 comics on the show, similar to idea earlier, for the first slot of our comics, there are 2 comics that can present here. It's either comic number 1 or comic number 2. And if that said comic, let's say comic number 1, is already scheduled and has performed here already, it can no longer appear on the 4th schedule. This would mean that if there are 2 options here, once we proceed to our 4th show, there's only 1 comic that will appear. So once we plot all these things, the fundamental counting principle allows us to multiply all the number of possibilities per schedule. So we simply multiply 3 times 2, that's 6, times 2, that's actually 12, times 1 and 1, you will have 12 different programs that can be made using the idea that 3 different bands will be performing as the first and the last in the middlemost show, and the 2 comics will be performing between the performance of your bands. Now you can try writing or listing down all the possibilities, because we only have 12 possibilities here. We can just do that, and this is how we answer this kind of situation. That's Count It In. Talking about getting the luck of the draw. For all in, subscribe now.